Okay, so this is a new segment. Might go up on the political channel, might just stay on the VOD channel, might just remain part of the VODs. Who knew? But I thought I'd test it out and try something. Just a little commentary. This is specifically when I did my election night stream. I posted that VOD over on the political channel, and on the main channel I was like, hey, if you missed the election night stream and you want to see my reaction to it, because I'm sure people, that's the main thing I've been seeing is people like, oh, I want to see the moment he realizes Trump won. It's like, you could do it, it's up there. And one of the responses I got was just like, you know, Trump 2024, someone very excited. And I was like, enjoy your inflation. Which, I mean, if you want to know why I think Trump's going to cause inflation, that's all in there. Needless to say, it ended with it that we've been fighting back and forth, we've been going into things. I don't even necessarily want to, I mean, I've pinned it, so if you want to read this back and forth, you can. But eventually, there's something we got to, someone who made an interesting comment, and I wanted to highlight it because it's this weird combination of, I think they're laughably wrong, but also I think that some people might not necessarily know that this is laughably wrong. And it's always good to, like, have a little discussion about this. So it's this one, Wretched Gamer. What a name. Where he's like, the majority of Democrats are the ones wanting all these immigrants in, and feminism is the root cause for wages stagnating. When you essentially double your workforce, you can get away with paying less because there are more people to fill those roles. So his argument basically is that, you know, we had so many jobs, and I mean, I'm not going to ignore the feminism thing because that assumes that, like, feminism was an inside job by companies to lower wages, that they wanted women in the workplace to push men out, so that there was more competition, so that they could lower wages. And I think if you look at, like, the history of, like, women's suffrage and everything, like, it's, like, obviously not true. There's no way. I am curious to see, like, did that depress wages at all? I don't think so. I think that's, yeah, someone in the comments is like, that's just an incel take. Seems very incel. But it's this idea that, like, immigrants coming in is causing wages to stagnate. You know, it's this idea that we have so many jobs. Let's say, for the sake of an argument, in fact, here, let's go ahead and real quick, let's bring up Paint. Okay, visuals seem to help people. So let's say we got like 100 jobs, right? And there's 100 Americans. Let's just do like little Johnny America here. He's so happy. He's wearing like a little top hat. It's like one of those Uncle Sam hats. I don't look like that. Okay, what would you like me to add to Johnny America over here to make him look more like you? A gun? There you go. Johnny American has to have a gun. Fat, he's gotta be fat? Okay. And a burger. Okay, so here's Johnny American with his burger and his gun and his top hat. He's a big, large man. So there are 100 jobs, there are 100 Americans. Which means, you know, those jobs are actually here. Let's do it even, because we don't have exactly the same amount of jobs. Let's say there's 90 jobs. Because you know how capitalism works. Some people have to be jobless. There's never enough jobs. Let's say there's 90 jobs and 100 Americans. Well, presumably, the top 90% hardest working Americans are the ones that will get the jobs. There'll be 10 people who will be left out, who will be jobless and presumably homeless, and that's because they don't work as hard as everyone else. They're lazy. They're ingrates. They don't deserve a job. Again, this is not the truth. This is how a lot of people seem to think. And then what happens if 50 immigrants come in? And here's Johnny Immigrant. And you know, you could tell they're an immigrant because they don't have a burger and a gun. They're un-American. Suddenly, instead of having 100 people competing for 90 jobs, you have 150 people competing for 90 jobs. And the claim is often that, like, oh, the immigrants, they don't speak English, they're lazy. But somehow, they can steal 50 jobs away from Americans. Presumably because they're working for less than minimum wage. And, I would argue that, like, well, we should make minimum wage higher. That's an argument for minimum wage. If you have a high minimum wage, then people can't get away. And if you have, like, really strict labor laws, if anything, that's something you need to go after the companies for, not the immigrants. Companies need to be punished severely if they're hiring anyone under the minimum wage, not just the immigrants. But either, all that aside, You've got more people competing for a job, and that means that 50 Americans who would otherwise have jobs suddenly don't have them, even though they're one of the good ones who aren't lazy. Schrodinger's immigrant. He's somehow weak and lazy and a criminal, but also competent enough to steal your job. How many people are qualified for this job? Yeah. It's more complicated. Who would have thought? Yeah. But I am curious how many people think that this is somewhat accurate. And I'm not saying this to dunk on you. You don't have to be ashamed. Because I feel like I've talked to so many people who treat jobs like it's a commodities market. Like there are so many jobs, and if we let in more people, there's more competition. Now there's less room in those jobs. It's supply and demand. The supply of workers has gone up, so the demand to pay people money for the jobs has gone down. I feel like that's a common thing. Like when you talk to people who aren't just like outright racist, people who are worried about immigrants, I feel like a lot of them sort of have this worry, right? Like we've only got so many jobs, and the more immigrants we let in, the less jobs those will be for Americans. But I feel like maybe some people don't really understand this. Jobs aren't a tangible thing. They aren't a commodity. Jobs are making goods and services. You're either like serving burger, you're like a fast food cook or something, or you're making gun. Those are essentially the two kinds of jobs. And the thing about them is that the more people you have in a country, the more people need burgers and guns. If we have 90 jobs, and let's just say, for instance, that like all those jobs are making burgers, if we add 150 people here, we now aren't just selling 100 burgers, we need to sell 150 burgers. We have more consumers, which means we need to hire more people to make those burgers. Everyone who comes over here, every immigrant that we add to the country is going to need housing, transportation, electricity, internet. They're going to want to eat at fast food restaurants. They're going to want to see streams and people doing content and everything. The more people are here, the more jobs there will be, because we now need to make more product. There's more consumers. I guess that's the way to put it. Medical jobs are the perfect imbalance between supply and demand. Yeah. And I mean, that would be the other thing, right? Is if a bunch of immigrants come over, they're probably not doctors. If they're fleeing from their bad economic conditions, they probably aren't doctors or businessmen or bankers or whatever. They're probably unskilled labor. We could do a whole nother thing on that. So they're not taking those high-paying, in-demand jobs. They still need all those high-paying jobs. We have a need for more doctors, which means it opens up more room for Americans to become doctor. Put a little stethoscope on that. Of course, in order for that to work, we would need like a robust education system where anyone who wants to become a doctor can do one, and they don't need to take out like $1 million loan to do so. Yeah, so that's just part of one of the broader thing of, I feel like, especially on the Democratic side, on the liberal side, we've given up too much ground to Republicans when it comes to the borders and immigration. It's become almost like a default thing of, yeah, immigration is bad. Yeah, we need to control the borders. And everything I know about economics, about population growth, is like, no, the more people we have here, the more we can create, the better we are, the bigger our tax base is. You know, a country with one person isn't going to be a very strong country. The more people you have, the more you can get done, the bigger workforce you have. We should be letting in as many people as possible. We should be making immigration as easy as possible, and we should give people an easy route to citizenship. Because the easier it is for them to work, the easier it is for them to get to work. So that's just a little spiel I wanted to put there. If you have any other comments or questions of your own, you know, I guess you could put them in the comments to this video. Let me know, you know, what you thought of this little, like, section. Would you like to see more sections like that? One of the things I feel like is missing from a lot of political commentary is the fact that everyone has to do things live. And yeah, this is kind of like a live react, but I've been, like, stewing on these thoughts for a little while. And if you do have a comment, if you do have a question, if you have some kind of political take that disagrees with mine, take your time, write it down as good as you can, make the best argument you can. There is no rush. You can go back, you can edit your thoughts, you can try to make it as clean and concise as you want. Don't worry about the timing of it. If it takes you a couple days, if you want to come back to it, go right ahead. I would rather get good arguments and then come up with, like, good responses to them than to have this shouting match, this back and forth where people aren't prepared, where people are trying to come up with stuff off the top of their head. I think that'll make a more healthy response than simply, like, coming to stream and saying something or writing an angry comment. The only problem with immigration is some people come to that specific country to do terroristic stuff. Yeah, but I feel like that's a problem with, like, general security, not with, like, the border itself, you know? If your worry is terrorism, the second biggest terrorist attack in United States history after 9/11 was the Oklahoma City bombing, which was not done by, like, a foreign immigrant. And if you look at the long list of stuff after that, it's almost all, like, homegrown American people who got disgruntled and did something crazy. And I mean, even the 9/11 terrorists, they didn't sneak in. They didn't come here illegally. They were here on visas. They had funding. And so I'd say domestic terrorism is a lot more common than foreign terrorism. If your worry is terrorism, then there are anti-terrorist stuff that will apply to immigrants and non-immigrants, and that's what we should focus on rather than trying to block all the good, hard-working, like, honest immigrants who want to come here. Hell of a conversation to join stream, yeah. As I said, if you're just joining us, I want to try to make the first 30 to 40 minutes, the first hour or so of stream, to be talking about real-life shit. I think it's important more than ever to discuss these kinds of things. Even on a Yu-Gi-Oh channel, because so many people are ignoring it, so many people have checked out, and I think I'm pretty good at discussing these things in a way that, like, doesn't make people angry or upset. I can usually be very calm and very collected when I'm speaking, and I think that's an important thing that is missing from a lot of political discussion. I feel like modern politics has become too much I'm here to win debate, yeah. That's the problem with debates, is that debates don't prove who's right, they prove who's better at debating.